So what we're going to be working on today is complex fractions. So I'd like you to put the video on pause, try this, and then come back and check your answers. Okay, so we have a division problem, and I have this parentheses divided by this parentheses. Now remember, in order to do same change flip, you have to have one fraction here and one fraction here. So I need to subtract. So in order to subtract fractions, we have to have the same denominator. So I'm going to put y over 1, and I'm going to multiply numerator and denominator by y. So I'm going to get y squared minus 25 over y divided by, and now let's look at the other parentheses. I have 1 plus 5 over y, so I'm going to put the 1 over 1 and multiply numerator and denominator by y. So I have y plus 5 over y. Now I could do same change flip. So in the same step, I'm going to factor. So I notice that I can factor that. That is the difference of two perfect squares. So that is y plus 5, y minus 5, over y times, flip the fraction, y over, you cannot factor y plus 5, so I'm going to put it in parentheses. And now I'm going to reduce. So y plus 5 and y plus 5 reduce to 1 and 1. Y and y reduce to 1 and 1. So then I'm left with just y minus 5. So now what we're going to work on is complex fractions. Now, really, basically what we did here was a complex fraction, right? Because I had a fraction, I had a parentheses that had fractions divided by, now remember, division is a fraction, divided by other fractions. This here is a complex fraction. And that's how we're going to tackle these problems. The first thing you're going to do is rewrite the problem so that you have a numerator divided by a denominator, like this. Okay, just like they do now. Make sure in the parentheses there is only one fraction, so that's the same thing I did in the do now. And I made sure I had one fraction. If you need to add or subtract, do so to get one fraction. Make sure though you had the same denominator, just like I did in the do now. And then you could do same change flip, the division. Make sure you factor completely, and then you can reduce. All right, so let's take a look at the first example. So notice that I have a fraction. 1/5 divided by 9/10. So I'm going to separate this. So I'm going to rewrite it as 1/5, in parentheses, divided by 9/10. So now I look to see if I have a fraction, one fraction in the first parentheses, one fraction in the second parentheses. So now I could do same change flip. So it's 1/5 times 10 over 9. I just have numbers so I can reduce at this point. So 5 and 10 reduce to 1 and 2. So I get 1 times 2 is 2. Over 1 times 9 is 9. So my answer is 2/9. Okay, so let's take a look at number 2. All right, so same thing. I'm going to rewrite this. I'm going to rewrite this as the numerator divided by the denominator. So it's a plus b over 2a divided by a plus b over 3a. And I notice that inside this parentheses, it's one fraction. Inside this parentheses, it's one fraction. So I can go ahead and do same change flip. So I have a plus b over 2a. There's nothing to factor there. So I'm going to put parentheses around the a plus b, that binomial, times, flip the fraction, 3a over a plus b. And I cannot factor a plus b. And remember, there's multiplication in here, so I can reduce a 2, a 3, an a, and an a. All right, so a plus b and a plus b reduce to 1 and 1. A and a reduce to 1 and 1. So I'm left with 3 over 2. Okay, so flip it over. Let's take a look at what's on the back. Okay, let's take a look at 3. Okay, so again, I'm going to set up my parentheses. So it's x plus 1 over x divided by 6. Now, to make 6 a fraction, I'm going to put it over 1. All right, so I notice in this parentheses here, I do not have a single fraction, so I'm going to have to add. So I'm going to put x over 1 and multiply the numerator and denominator by x. So I get x times x is x squared plus 1 over x times, now I could flip 1 over 6. X squared plus 1 is not factorable. It's not the difference of two perfect squares. Nothing reduces, so it's x squared plus 1 over 6x. Okay, so let's take a look at number 4. Okay, so number 4, I'm going to rewrite, start off like that. So I have z plus 1 over 5 divided by z squared minus 1 over 25. So in both of my parentheses, right, I do not have one fraction. So I'm going to have to add and subtract in them. So I'm going to put z over 1 here, multiply numerator and denominator by 5. So I get 5z plus 1 over 5 divided by, multiply numerator and denominator by 25. 25z squared minus 1 over 25. So now I'm going to do same change, flip, and I'm going to factor at the same time. So 5z plus 1 cannot be factored over 5 times 25 over 5z plus 1 and 5z minus 1. That's the difference of two perfect squares. All right, so let's see what we can reduce here. So 5z plus 1 and 5z plus 1 reduced to 1 and 1. 25 and 5 reduced to 1 and 5. So my answer is 5 over 5z minus 1. Okay, so let's take a look at number 5. Okay, so let's start by rewriting number 5. So I have x over 2 minus 8 over x divided by 1 over 4 minus 1 over x. Okay, so I have to make one fraction in each one. All right, so for the first parentheses, I have a 2 and an x. I'm going to have to multiply top and bottom of the first fraction, numerator and denominator, by x, and the numerator and denominator of the second fraction by 2. So I have x times x over 2 times x, and I'm going to multiply by 2. So I have x squared minus 16 over 2x divided by. So now I'm going to have to take the second fraction, and I'm going to have to multiply the first fraction by numerator and denominator by x, and the second fraction numerator and denominator by 4. So I multiply the first one by x, second one by 4. So I have x minus 4 over 4x. Now I could do same change, flip. And I'm going to factor, so this is the difference of two perfect squares, so it's x plus 4, x minus 4 over 2x times, flip it, 4x over, cannot factor x minus 4, so I put in parentheses. All right, so I have x minus 4 and x minus 4 reduced to 1 and 1. 2 and 4 reduced to 1 and 2. X and x reduced to 1 and 1, so my answer is x plus 4. Okay, so let's take a look at number 6. Okay, so I'm going to start by rewriting it. So I have 1 plus 2 over y minus 24 over y squared divided by 1 plus 4 over y minus 12 over y squared. Okay, so I notice in the first parentheses, so I have a 1 over 1. So I have a y and a y squared. So I'm going to have to get the y to become a y squared by multiplying numerator and denominator by y. And I'm going to have to get the 1 here, a y squared, by multiplying numerator and denominator by y squared. So I'm going to multiply by y squared here, and I'm going to multiply by y here. So I'm going to get y squared plus 2y minus 24 over y squared. Okay, in the second parentheses, I have 1 over 1. Same thing, I'm going to have to multiply the first fraction by y squared and the second fraction by y. So I get y squared plus 4y minus 12 over y squared. All right, so I'm going to do same change, flip, and factor at the same time. So y squared plus 2y minus 24 factors and becomes y plus 6 times y minus 4 over y squared times, flip the fraction, y squared over y squared plus 4y minus 12 factors and becomes y plus 6 times y minus 2. All right, now let's reduce. So y plus 6 and y plus 6 reduce to 1 and 1. Y squared and y squared reduce to 1 and 1. So my answer is y minus 4 over y minus 2. Okay, so that's it. And, we'll practice some more. Have a good night.